Hi and welcome. You're listening to the X22 Report. My name is Dave and this is episode 1108, and today's date is October 23rd, 2016, and the title of the episode is The Current Economic Collapse News Brief. Let's get right into the economic collapse news. Now, the plans for the elite, the globalists, the central bankers, the corporations, it is not going well for them right now. They continually try to push their one world government legislation at different governments, and we can see the people are fighting back, and the people are saying absolutely not, we're not going for this. Governments are actually looking at this saying no, this does not benefit our country. And we see the TTIP, the TPP, CETA, they're all having problems. And right now we understand, because we spoke about it, the Canadian team walked out of the meeting because it looked like they were going nowhere with CETA. So right now we see there's emergency meetings that are being held in Brussels to try and pull this deal back from the brink of collapse. And Canada's trade minister says it is up to the EU to save CETA deal. It is being blocked by the opposition from Belgium, and we're continually seeing many protests around the world saying this is not good for the people, and it really isn't. And we can see that the elite, the central bankers, they really are trying to push this deal on the people as hard as they possibly can. We know the TTIP is quite dead right now unless something happens. CETA is the backup plan, and it is going nowhere whatsoever. Out in Syria, we see that during the humanitarian aid, the ceasefire, which is now over, we see the Syrian rebels, well, they weren't letting the civilians leave the area. They were shelling the humanitarian corridors. They were picking off individuals with sniper fire. And we can see al-Nusra and al-Sham, the rebranded al-Qaeda team, which the United States did, so the UN wouldn't recognize them as terrorists, but it doesn't really matter. You can call them whatever you want. It's all part of the same group. And this is why they continually change their names. We can see they were preventing the International Committee of the Red Cross from evacuating the wounded in these areas. And remember, all of this is being done by the United States government central bankers. These are terrorists. These are paid mercenaries, which the coalition forces have hired to remove Assad. And of course, every plan they've come up with, every propaganda piece that they've been using has not worked. And they've tried many of them. And they're going back to the chemical weapons once again, because they're saying there's leaked information from the UN that, yes, Assad was absolutely responsible for the chemical weapons attacks. But what we've seen in the past, that it always turns out to be the terrorist groups. And at this point, why would Assad turn to chemical weapons? Syria invited Russia into their country. They've been removing the Islamic State. And they've been battling these terrorist groups for a very long time, and they have the upper hand. And of course, this report is going back to last August. But we can see right now that this has been going on for quite a while, and it seems that this report was timed perfectly when the United States is at a point where they are backed into a corner, and they're trying to use this propaganda against the Assad government once again. And they've been doing this for quite a while. And they keep changing their stories. If you really look at this, Assad uses chemical weapons. Assad uses barrel bombs. Assad uses all these different things to destroy his own people. But then the people turn around and they elect Assad as their president. We have a new election coming up, and the United States government central bankers know that once this election occurs, Assad again is going to be voted in because he invited Russia in. They removed the terrorists from their land. They almost have Aleppo. And the United States government central bankers, they're doing whatever they possibly can to gain traction here. And right now, they can't get any. And this is what should make everyone start to worry, because they're going to go to the next step. And the question is, what is the next step? Well, the next step is going to be a major event. They have nothing left. They're backed into a corner. They have no traction in Syria anymore. The terrorists are being beaten left and right. They have no way of matching the forces of Russia and Syria right now. The only way for the United States to get back into the game is to have some type of an event. And this is what we're looking at right now. Now, we understand that the United States government has pointed their finger at Russia for hacking into the DNC, cyber attacking the election system, and they're continually pointing their fingers. But very interestingly, there was a 26-year-old entrepreneur, and he says, well, I might have some leads of what has happened with the DNC and the election systems, because he rents servers. He has a small business. It's called King Servers. And he says, we have the information. If the FBI asks, we're ready to supply the IP addresses, the logs, but nobody has contacted us whatsoever. And after learning that the two renters were using the nicknames Robin Good and Dick Robin, and they used his servers, they rented them out from the billing information. He looked it up, and he said, okay, I understand who these people are. They were used to hack Arizona and Illinois voting systems, and he shut down the entire systems. Now, does he know who these people are? No, he doesn't. He knows that this is the names they were going under. And we can see right now that none of the agencies are even looking at this. And when we look at the internal data coming from the King servers, we see that they used about 60 different IP addresses. And it came from Finland, France, Italy, Norway, Britain, and Sweden. And this needs to be looked into, and we know what the U.S. government central bankers do. They point a finger. It's complete propaganda. They have absolute no proof. And this is exactly what they do every single time. And when somebody calls them out on it to show the proof, to show where you got this information, they can never produce it. And again, once something happens like this and they come up with an answer and they know exactly who it is, it's completely impossible. There is no investigation. You just can't say, oh, look, the state actor did it, because they bounce it off and they use many, many different IP addresses where it could be coming from any part of the world. So it is quite difficult to prove, and this is why you know it's fake, phony, and false right from the start. Because how do you know this without any type of investigation? You don't. So we just had this cyber attack in the east, some out west, and security experts are blaming botnets made by thousands of hacked embedded systems on the internet. Now, the attack originated from the IoT devices that had been affected by the Mirai botnet, whose source code was dumped shortly thereafter, revealing it to be clumsy. It's like not really sophisticated, and we can see that they attacked devices that had weak security on them. And there were certain computers that were hacked into, cameras, anything that was attached to the internet. And these devices were used to send traffic to Dyn, which is a domain service where each address, there is an address, is attached to a name, and it routes the traffic to the proper domain where you go to visit a website. And this whole thing was brought down using this Mirai source code. And we can see that millions of systems, they were used in this attack. Now, the attack only used about 10% of the 500,000 Mirai nodes available. And we can see right now that any group or any state actor, any internal government could use this to their benefit. Now, there are a couple of organizations that are taking responsibility for this. And we see the first one, which is called New World Hackers. They've claimed responsibility for the attack. And they're saying that, yes, we were doing it. We were showing how powerful we can attack something. The other one came from a tweet from WikiLeaks saying that, hey, stop the attacks. They get the point. And they were saying this was in retaliation for what happened in Ecuador, where they shut down the internet for Julian Assange. Now, we can see right now the U.S. government, of course, they're looking into it. They're looking at what has happened here. And I wouldn't be surprised that they come out with some type of announcement this week. Most likely, they might say it's Russia, or maybe they'll fess up and say they really don't know because they need to investigate further. But we'll see what happens. But we see the people around the country, they're really not worried about global warming. They're worried somewhat about Obamacare. They're worried somewhat about terrorism. But the major thing that the American people are scared of is government corruption. 60% of Americans fear corruption of the government above anything else. And this is coming from Chapman University Survey of American Fears. So all the propaganda that the government has been feeding us about terrorism, about global warming, about gun control, the people are looking at this saying, you know something, we're really more scared of the government, the corruption, and what they're doing than anything else. And we can see right now that the government continually tries to push fear on the people, where during the debates they're saying that, how many times they mention it? Many, many times, that Russia is responsible. Well, Putin decided, you know something, if you're going to say we're responsible, let's do this. Why don't you allow Russian monitors to come in with other countries and monitor the U.S. elections? Well, Putin just went check on the chessboard. And of course, the request was completely denied. Mark Toner, the Department spokesman, said that Putin is making a PR stunt. Well, actually, the United States does a lot of PR stunts. Putin was just saying, listen, if you're going to call us out on it and you're telling us that we're the ones doing it, why don't we bring international community into the fold and monitor the U.S. elections? Now, of course, the United States government, central bankers, they do not want this. Why? Because we know for a fact these election systems are easily hackable. I know the U.S. government central bankers are saying that there's no way they can be hacked. There's no way that they can be manipulated. Now remember, every time you hear U.S. government come out and say this, it is always the opposite of what they're saying. And what's very interesting, many of you probably have been hearing about this, where they want you to send in your ballots very early. Send them in now. Don't wait to go to the election booths. Now, everyone's probably wondering, why would they do this? Well, Dr. Paul Craig Roberts explained why they do this. And it really does make sense, because when you send your election ballot in, they can get a handle on which direction the people are voting in. Remember, when I said they don't look at the corporate polls, they don't look at the media polls, they look at their own information to figure out what the people are actually thinking. And more people that send in the early ballots, they look at them. And remember, hacking and manipulating the election systems comes from the top, because the cards that they use, the system that they use, is then delivered to each district, and they're already pre-programmed. So they need to get a handle on what the people are thinking. And this way, they can make it look like the elections are very close. And this is why they want everyone to send it in very, very early. And we also see, during this time period, that DHS, police, military, they're holding simulated drills on the power grid right now. And there are also reports that the U.S. military, DHS, FEMA, well, they're gearing up for a huge, officially unannounced martial law drill set to October 30th and running 30 days from that point. So it's going to be running from October 30th during the elections and right after the elections. Now, we know for a fact that FEMA was on the ground a day or so before 9/11. Every time there is an event, anytime there's something that happens, we know that they put things into place. We know there's a drill. We know these people are on the ground. And we understand from across the country, where we're getting information from others that are writing into me, that a lot of the National Guard, police departments, they're on high alert. They're mobilizing for during the election and after the election. So when we put all of this together, we see that DHS, FEMA, they have this drill that they're having between October 30th to November 30th. We understand that they're simulating attacks on the power grid. We just had this latest cyber attack, and we're just waiting to hear what the U.S. government, central bankers, and the agencies have to say about this. But we can see everything that we've seen so far, it doesn't point to Russia. And we understand that most likely this was an inside job. People were hired to do this, to create this surface type of attack, which really doesn't damage anything. Yes, it stops people from visiting the sites, but if there was really going to be a cyber attack from a state actor, they're not going to waste their time on a DDoS attack. They're going to go after the main system, the critical systems. So this, to me, is a setup. It's high level, and it's to create propaganda. But we can see there's a lot of things happening right now at the same time, and we can see that different agencies, they're prepared, drills are going on. So most likely, depending on how these elections go, they're getting prepared and ready for the fallout. Listen, everyone, thanks a lot for listening. Be well, be safe, and especially be prepared. Thanks a lot.